Hey, hey, hey. It's uh it's Filter Free Friday, y'all. Listen, I am so glad you all are here. Recently there was an event in Kansas City where a 14-year-old boy physically assaulted a 66-year-old man. And let me tell you, we are not talking about a 66-year-old man like in the gym. Like this dude looked old, right? And this kid was just wailing on him, just going in. Um, and the guy was pretty much helpless. And I thought about it for many days. It was awful. There's nothing good to say about it. You know, you are curious what happened in this situation that would cause such a violent reaction. You I was curious about what happened to this child to cause them to act in this way. But then over the course of the week, I started seeing stuff that just always just causes me pause. There were questions about should this kid be charged as an adult? Questions about, should his parents be charged? And I just, have to unequivocally say that I cannot think of a reason why we would charge a child as an adult. Part of what we have to just recognize is that the frontal lobe of the brain is not developed until a person is about 26 years old. We know this. The front part of the brain is the part that's responsible for judgment. It's responsible for controlling your impulses. It is the thing that keeps a kid from crashing out and then like attacking somebody. And the idea that you can understand long-term consequences at 14 is absolutely ridiculous when we physically know that the brain doesn't mature until the mid 20s. And so kids are more likely to be impulsive, to be influenced by their peers, to struggle with weighing the risk of their decisions. And that is why we have a juvenile justice system and why we also have an adult justice system. You do not charge children as adults, period, point blank, full stop. It doesn't mean that a person is going to get away with whatever because you charge them as a juvenile. It means that we have a juvenile justice system. Juvenile means below a certain age. And when someone is below a certain age, you treat them as such. The other thing about kids is that children are capable of changing. And when we put children in adult prisons, we know that prisons are not rehabilitation centers. They might have the name correctional facility, but they're not designed to be correctional at all. We put people in prison and we put them to work and leave them in a cell, barely feed them, don't think they should have soap. And when we consider that kids are going to be physically and sexually assaulted in adult prisons, listen, man, you look at a 14-year-old boy, and I would argue that people who are disruptive are the most disrupted. Something happened to him. And so when you consider, when we say, okay, yeah, he should be tried as an adult, what you're saying is that like half of the juveniles who are in adult prison, you want him to be sexually assaulted. That like half of the juveniles that are in adult prisons, that you think that he should be um, put in isolation to protect him, right? Because what we say is we're gonna put this kid in an adult prison, but we're gonna protect him, so we can't put him in general population because we know they're going to be prey to the adults, many of whom are in prison because they have done predatory behavior. And second, what does that protection look like? Solitary confinement. So you're putting a kid who has brain has not fully developed in prison with adults when we have a juvenile response to this situation. Y'all let me know what you think. But I am over here going, wait a minute now. Wait a minute. And there are people I love who have said things like, well, what if that were your mother or your father? What if that were your son? Yes, if that were my father, yes, that child should be held to account for something. But I also believe we have a juvenile justice system for a reason. And so you all just let me know like where you stand. But part of the reason why this has just bothered me so much is that when you trying to teach the concept of empathy, which means stepping in the shoes of another person and trying to imagine what they think, feel, and believe, when we don't have the ability to say, don't even step into the shoe, you don't even have to step into the shoes of this kid because it's clear we can't go back to when we were 14 and imagine the stupid stuff we did, right? I mean, on any single day, you've got over 2,000 young people that are held in adult in jails. It If you can just imagine what happens to a child in an adult jail, I believe that we can change our position on this matter. You tell me if I'm ridiculous on it. But I think, we've got some serious work to do, man. Serious work to do. We got serious work to do. I just cannot imagine doing something when I'm 14 that then forever for the rest of my life completely keeps me from being able to engage in society. And that would be the result of putting a child in an adult prison. And then just forget about what happens to them in solitary confinement. Forget about what happens to them when they're sexually assaulted. Forget about what happens to them when they're physically assaulted. You got, like, let me look this up here. You've got a juvenile suicide rate in adult jails at like 4 or 5 times higher than youth in the general population. You are sentencing a child to the death penalty by putting them in an adult prison. And sometimes we just spout off the mouth, and the first thing we think is like punitive. Imagine if that were your child. Imagine if it were you, and make a better decision. I don't know why this is bothering me so much. I think it's because if we can't look at children in this way, how are we going to look at all of our neighbors with a more empathetic lens? My goodness. And if we can look at children and adultify them, that explains why there's not even more outrage about the Epstein files. You don't see 14-year-old little girls as needing protection because you think that they should be treated as adults in certain cases, that perhaps we should charge their parents for putting them in harm's way. I stand pretty solidly on this, and I think there's some other people who stand pretty solidly with me. But it's like, this is the kind of thing that causes us to say, yeah, a 10-year-old gets raped by a parent or a family member. Yeah, go ahead and make them have the baby instead of using reproductive health options to prevent their lives from being ruined forever. Like, what has happened to us? What has happened to us? And I don't propose to be the person who knows all, end all, be all. But man, listen, in the Jackson County juvenile system, what my understanding is, almost all of those children fit a certain demographic. And Jackson County is not a singular demographic. Why is that? If the situation were reversed, if all the demographic details were the reverse, would we be saying put that child in an adult prison, charge them as an adult? We've got some internal work to do. And I invite us to start today. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got work to do.